Hi, everybody. This is Lauren Baker of Search Engine Journal. Welcome to today's episode of the SEJ Show, where we have John Lee, the head of evangelism at Microsoft Advertising. Hey, John, how's it going?
Going quite well. Happy Tuesday, Lauren. Glad to be here.
Thank you. I'm really happy to have you. Yeah, Microsoft Advertising is a big deal. And, one reason I was excited to have you on today's episode, sponsored by InMotion Hosting, by the way, is because I feel that a lot of the search marketing world focuses so much on Google. I think sometimes Microsoft can be overlooked with basic conversation. I think people forget how large Microsoft is, especially Microsoft Advertising. So before we get started and get into that, how about if you go ahead and introduce yourself for our audience today?
This sounds good. I almost wanted to just jump straight in and start speaking to that, but I'll hold the reins here for a little bit. Hi, I'm John. My pronouns are he, him, his, and middle-aged white male, wearing a goofy hat and an even goofier T-shirt, Microsoft themed for those that can't see. So I'm the head of evangelism. That's a big title for a big role that spans a lot of ground. I write, I speak. I actually work with a group of industry influencers, thought leaders, and media folks as well, sharing the product roadmap and different insights and research that we're doing on the Microsoft advertising side. So it's a fascinating role. Every day is a little bit different, but it means I get to speak to awesome people like you, Lauren.
Awesome. Thank you. And it's really a pleasure to have you because we've been talking on Twitter for a while. So
we have.
Excited to have you. And where do you live, John?
I am just outside of Louisville, Kentucky. So I'm nowhere near the Microsoft mothership in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing about and how long you been at Microsoft again?
I just celebrated my 5-year anniversary back in October. And so I don't know if you can see it in my camera shot, but there's like a piece of crystal.
I do, right next to Grogu, yes. Also known as
the child.
Baby Yoda. Yeah.
Okay, that's the 5-year Microsoft, they call it the 5-year crystal. And so 5 years and a few months in, and very happy to be here.
Okay, so for all of you that are listening and not watching right now, you gave us a little bit of a short introduction about yourself, John, but based upon your office, I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Fire away.
First of all, behind your left shoulder, is that a PRS that I see? What guitar is that?
This is actually a line 6 Variax.
Okay.
That allows me to do all sorts of fun cheatery. So for those that know guitars and music, if you're playing in a band and you need to change keys, through the course of a set, that means multiple guitars. Well, this bad boy, all it means is pushing a button.
Line you can also 6.
Yeah, Variax. It's a really cool guitar. There's another one stashed away in a gig bag back there. It's a ESP LTD. I love that thing. It's a super light Gibson clone with a mahogany fretboard. It's a beautiful guitar.
I would think that the line 6 might be pretty useful for when you switch it into maybe a Black Sabbath tune or something like that.
Right, or like anything that's got some drop D or E flat, anything out of your normal tuning. But I'll just call it, I'm in a classic rock cover band. And so, you play a lot of standard tuning, but you also play a whole lot of E flat. There's a lot of music from that era that's in E flat. So a little bit of music trivia for you. Listen.
There you go. I also, you made your Grogu reference. I see a little Mandalorian style thing there on the window, as well as and an Incredible Hulk issue. Not sure which one that is, but on the wall as well.
I'm all over the place.
Yeah, comics, guitar, play guitar, rock and roll, etc.
Motorcycles,
and the Indianapolis Colts. So
equal opportunity geek. I'll put it that way.
There you go. So I was preluding today's podcast episode by talking about the size of Microsoft advertising. By the way, Blas Carrasco on the SEJ team says that the ESP rocks. So that's
Okay.
That's great to hear. Rock on, Blas. So anyway, very new to SEJ, by the way. Don't mess with Blas. He does oh man, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Philippine knife fighting as well as Muay Thai. So
Wow.
yeah. So we
don't mess with that guy
here. I know. So Microsoft advertising. So let's talk about how broad of a stroke is the world of Microsoft advertising. Are we just talking about Bing? Are we just talking about browsers? Or are we talking about a whole other what does the ecosystem look like?
Yeah, well, so I mean, we'll start from the top down. I mean, Microsoft is a very, very big company that has massive reach throughout, whether you're talking verticals, enterprise business, what's happening at the consumer level, you name it. It's a massive company, and and we're in that short list of companies that are competing for, most profitable, most valuable company in the world, and that's an exciting thing. But then as we zoom in with a microscope to the Microsoft advertising level, we are a successful $10 billion business. So that's 10 billion with a B in yearly revenue. And in fact, we're coming up soon on the end of fiscal. Look for a refresh of that data. When you include what's happening with LinkedIn advertising and a couple of our other advertising lines of business, all in, that's more than 15 billion a year. And so we know that we're not talking Google numbers, we're not talking Google billions here, but for any business to be speaking of revenue, operating in the black in the billions is a big business. So what does that? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because I'm getting some comments coming in about Bing. So
yes.
Okay, search marketing, search ads, Bing, but not just Bing, right?
Not just Bing.
Okay, so let's break down the Microsoft advertising empire. Okay.
All right.
Where will we find traditional search advertising beyond Bing that's part of the Microsoft?
So when we're talking search comes in two flavors. We're gonna talk standard search, and we're gonna talk our search partner network. So if we're talking standard search, that is Bing, of course. That's what everyone assumes, right? We did used to be called Bing Ads, right? I see that in the comments as well. That was our name for a time, for good reason, because Bing is Microsoft's search engine directly competing with Google, and it stands to reason that we're serving our search ads on our search engine. But it's not just Bing. That includes also Yahoo and AOL. And so we're talking about, if you're looking at the list, the top 5, search engines in the world, you've got 3 of them coming in under our umbrella from an advertising unit. So that's that. We also have our search partner network, which is a massive collection of search sites, small search sites across the globe that brings in an immense amount of traffic. And so having one of those brain fart moments, I used to have the list memorized. I don't have it memorized anymore, apparently. But I mean, we're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sites that bring in valuable traffic. So to your point, it's not just Bing. When we're talking search, we're talking Bing, Yahoo, AOL, and then a litany of other sites when we include our search partner network.
Okay,
but we're more than search as well.
So let's go through the customer journey, right? I do a search, I go to a site, I bounce off the site because I don't want to buy my Iron Maiden shirt today. I'm going to buy it another day, and then suddenly I'm retargeted because I've been cookied, right? So I'm retargeted via different forms of display advertising. So let's talk about display. Microsoft advertising, what's within the display net component of Microsoft advertising as well?
So we're not traditional display. We set out to build a true native advertising platform, and we call that the Microsoft Audience Network. And the name is intentional as our targeting, all of our targeting for the Microsoft Audience Network is based on audiences. So that could be remarketing, yes, but it's also going to be in-market audiences and a customer match audience type, the usual suspects, but it's all based on audiences. So therefore, the Microsoft Audience Network. When we launched that was initially just a kind of premier Microsoft properties. So think the Edge browser, MSN, Microsoft News, and even Outlook.com. But that has grown immensely to include, strong partners. So look at CBS Interactive and like CBS Sports. So I know those are both under the same umbrella, but USA Today and it used to be we would count like, okay, yeah, we've got like a dozen sites that are no longer Microsoft properties that we're running these ads on. Now it's in the hundreds and continuing to grow. And so, there's going to be a customer decision journey that includes many sites, and it could include Google, it could include Bing as well, right? There are those individuals that, they may have started a search on their phone, they see a bit of content when they get home on their computer, and then maybe they've got Bing set as a default on their computer versus, maybe it was Chrome on their phone. And so people do hop, skip, and jump around in that. And so there's all kinds of opportunities to target consumers throughout their decision journey. And Microsoft advertising is a significant piece of that.
Then one interesting thing that came up, especially for you B2B marketers that are out there right now, is I had Nava Hopkins, who does our Ask a PPC column here at SEJ, on the show. And I asked, hey, Nava, what are some secrets out there, like especially on the B2B side? And she said, this is what she told me, that first of all, advertising on LinkedIn can get a little bit pricey, right?
Yes.
But utilizing the Microsoft Advertising Network, you can target LinkedIn attributes so you can hit people based upon their job title, where they work, et cetera, and target that way throughout the Microsoft network, which also includes the ability to serve ads within Outlook and Office.
Well, not Office, not yet.
Office,
at least not that I'm aware of, right?
Okay.
Just to clarify, but Outlook.com for sure. In addition to Edge, the MSN homepage, even just the Microsoft Start page, right, within your browser, right?
Gotcha.
Assuming you're using Edge, along with a host of other pages. But yeah, LinkedIn profile targeting. I would call it a sleeper, but it's not. It's something that we speak about often, but I feel like the industry at large needs to hear it again and again and again. So Microsoft bought LinkedIn a number of years ago, and one of the first questions, myself included, because at the time I was still a client, I didn't work for Microsoft at the time, was, wow, I can see how, owning LinkedIn and having a search engine and a search advertising platform, there's some obvious synergies there, particularly when you think B2B. And it took some time. Anybody who's worked in the corporate world, when you have a massive purchase like that, oftentimes an entity, particularly an entity as big and as well known as LinkedIn, kind of operates as its own company within a broader shell of a larger company, right? So Microsoft being that larger company. So it takes time for data to be shared, for agreements to be made of how could this work? How could the LinkedIn data set and the Microsoft data set zipper up together? And the outcome of that is LinkedIn profile targeting. So yeah, to your point, company. So if you know that you have people that work at Verizon or Adobe or Coca-Cola, I mean, you name it, right? You can go after that. So anybody doing ABM marketing, right? Account-based marketing should just be ringing a bell immediately for you. Job function, right? So think engineering, sales, consulting, and then of course industry, which gives you an even different brush, right, to paint your targeting picture with. But just to clarify something that you said, yes, for sure you can use this with the Microsoft Audience Network and run native ads utilizing LinkedIn profile targeting, but it's also applicable for search. So our core search as well as our search partner network.
Interesting. So if I really want to hit that VP of marketing or that decision maker, whoever it is, I can hit them wherever they are within that audience. And I'd also like to remind people that just about every enterprise company that I know of picked up and started using Microsoft Teams last year as well. So is there any kind of Microsoft advertising integration into the Teams experience?
There is not, other than we all use it.
Right.
There are all sorts of interesting integrations within the Microsoft ecosystem in Teams. In fact, there was one I saw today, literally just in the news this morning, around a particular company that Microsoft purchased last year that, for those that are familiar with OKRs, objectives and key results, it's a utility that allows you to basically state your OKRs and then track them over a period of time. And Microsoft is actually baking that into Viva. And Viva is like, how do you work with your employees? So there's Viva Learning. This will effectively be Viva OKRs, and it'll be baked in directly into Teams. And so there's a lot of exciting things happening there, but I don't want to get too far off topic, but nothing from an advertising perspective just yet.
Awesome. And now, I want to get back into industries for a second, because you did kind of talk about some specific industries that can be targeted. But one thing I want to do is kind of complete this Microsoft ecosystem. I love playing John Madden football, particularly on the Xbox. The Xbox is owned by Microsoft, as is Mojang, the parent company of Minecraft, as is Activision. Or is it Blizzard Activision now, or whatever?
It's Blizzard Activision, but yeah,
Blizzard
both of those names are important for very different reasons. But that's one very large acquisition that's still in the works.
Still in the works. Okay, so we talked about search, and we talked about basic browser, and we haven't really gotten into mobile display yet, but browser, basic display. Are Microsoft advertising ads shown within the Xbox experience? Any of those other locations? How does that typically work on that side and integrated?
Yeah. So this is where, working within a corporate entity can get a little tricky, in that, Xbox is massive. There's no denying that fact. Xbox is a massive entity. It is a significant chunk of the Microsoft business. Gaming at large, right, is one of the largest addressable markets across the globe. So to answer your question, there are ads that are served within the Xbox user experience at various levels. Those ads currently live within their own walled garden. And Microsoft advertising, we have our hands all over that. From a product marketing standpoint, our sellers, right, our account teams can handle those conversations and get clients up and running on Xbox ads. They are currently, like I said, it's a walled garden. It's a separate universe at this time. I wish I could say, yeah, coming up in the next couple of months, right, target Xbox directly with Microsoft advertising. I don't know that that's happening anytime soon, but just know that that ecosystem is hot. It's large. It's about to grow even bigger with the Blizzard Activision purchase as well. But at this time, it's a separate entity. So what I would say is that if that is something of interest to anyone that's listening or watching this, certainly reach out and ask, because that is an opportunity that can be tackled, and it's a very large audience.
It hit me a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, I guess. So a couple of years ago, I was at the mall, and actually it's the Topanga Mall in the Valley here in the LA area. So on one side, there's an Apple store. Directly across from the Apple store, there's a Microsoft store. And I made a very interesting observation. The Microsoft store was full of kids and gamers, and typically people underneath the age of 25, right? They're in there doing their Minecraft stuff, their Xbox stuff, fooling around with everything Microsoft, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Apple store, on the other hand, was full of boomers. So typically people that were 60 and older, trying to figure out how to use their iPhones, how to use this, how to use that,
Mm-hmm.
how to use an iPad. That was a very, very interesting observation. And this was like right after you guys bought Minecraft. And it was like, and it occurred to me for a second, I'm like, ooh, that's a big deal, right?
It
Because
is a big deal.
there's
Yes.
really no Apple gaming, right? Any games that you're going to utilize on Apple come through the App Store, and they're powered by somewhere else. There's Apple TV, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's really not much else
Yet.
outside of the device yet there on that side.
Right.
And
I
then
would
on the
say yet.
Microsoft side, you guys,
And
you all have
underscore
it
that.
between Microsoft and Sony. You guys got gaming covered, right?
Mm.
So
when you think platform, you think PC.
Mhm.
You're talking about one of the biggest players in the space, of course. Microsoft, between what's happening with Xbox on the console side, PC gaming, what's happening with Game Pass, which is a subscription for games, and anything that comes through Microsoft Studios is available day one of launch through Game Pass. So if you're a Game Pass subscriber, you get immediate access to brand new games that you would have normally had to have paid, anywhere from $50 to $70 for to play right out of the gate. And Sony is a significant competitor, right? Can't stress that enough, right? A significant competitor on console, right? On console, period.
On console.
And so that's an interesting turf war, but Microsoft's got bigger reach. And I'll come back to the Apple piece. I said yet and underline that because I don't remember how long ago this would have been. A couple of months. I remember reading that Apple is investing in gaming.
Mhm.
And when you think about the capability to stream games, right? So that is a huge functionality of Game Pass, is the ability to stream a game. And we're talking like high quality, first run games, stream them to your phone and play them over the cloud or from a computer. But Apple is definitely, probably, based on the news that I've seen, going to be a player in that space as well. And I think that they're well suited for that, right? Both from how well they dominate the mobile market, both with iPhones but also iPads. They have the screen space to serve up a massive gaming opportunity. And so it's one of those things, don't count them out. But no, you make an interesting point, right? When people think Microsoft, I don't know
I
what
think
the
Bill
exact
Gates.
ratio is, but it's a big chunk of the time people assume enterprise business, B2B. That's the tried and true. And while that's still a significant portion of the bottom line for Microsoft, the consumer matters greatly. And yeah, whether that's gaming, whether that's devices, what's happening in that space as well. So there's a lot happening, and it's an interesting perspective, right? The Walgreens versus CVS argument, right?
Yeah,
On
exactly.
every street corner in every city.
Exactly. So we've kind of gone over like the ecosystem of Microsoft advertising, some of it within walled gardens, some of it to be determined. But for the most part, we're talking about search, your network, the ability for ads to be wherever anyone is within the Microsoft Audience Network. Am I getting that correct?
Mhm.
Was it?
That's correct.
And everything else. So, and then also, there's some important and growing vertical industries that you all have been targeting and focusing on as well, right? So would you like to get into that a little bit?
Yeah. So I'll just call it out, right? The gorilla in the room, and that is, we compete with Google. That's the bottom line, and we're both serving up similar activities, similar feature sets across our platforms. And so, our engineers and our leaders, when they sit down at the table to say, okay, well, what's coming next? What are we going to put on our product roadmap for the next year? Often the conversation is, how can we differentiate ourselves? And one area that we saw a huge opportunity in was in verticals. And so we were actually first to the table with an automotive ads vertical offering Google managed to follow suit within, I think, within 6 months or so. They announced their beta. But that was our first shot across the bow when you think verticals. And so you have search. We already know, we as the publisher, but we also know our clients, right? Automotive is a massive industry in the digital advertising world, right? And huge demand. And despite some of the woes when we think of actual automotive inventory during COVID and the pandemic, and that's a topic for another day, a completely different show. But despite those inventory issues, search volume and demand for vehicles has continued to grow. And we see that, and we know that Google sees that as well. So it's a massive area, but we know people are searching, but when you're searching for a car, a basic text ad often is not enough. So what does a vertical experience mean in this case? Well, that means we're going to serve an image of the vehicle. We're going to serve the price for that vehicle. We're going to serve relevant feature information, the location of the vehicle, and all that's going to be based on the location of the dealer or the salesperson and the person's searching. And that's an ideal match, right? And so all of those pieces were already in place on the back end. It was a matter of how do we connect all of this, and how do we make it easy for the advertiser to submit this data? And so it's think shopping, right? Shopping ads are not based on keywords. Shopping ads are based on a product feed. Well, vertical ads are based on feeds. And automotive, much like other industries, was already based on feeds. And so this was an easy win for them to say, hey, I've already got this feed that I'm serving to Auto Trader or wherever. Now I can turn around and give this to Microsoft Advertising, and boom, I'm going to have these beautiful on-point ads serving, across Bing and the other properties that we have. It's also applicable now on the Microsoft Audience Network. And so serving these beautiful automotive inventory ads, but that's where we started. And so we've taken that flag and run with it. And so travel is another huge addressable market that is served well by an image first creative, an image first ad that includes price and other variable data, right? Where you can try to squeeze a lot of that in, into a text ad, but it's going to be difficult, particularly if you think about tours and activities, right? Some of that has to do with availability, right? It's not just I have this, but it's do I have it today? Like do I actually have any open seats left on this tour?
Right.
By serving it through a feed, it stays fresh, it stays current, and if you're sold out, it comes down, right? And only those tours and activities that are still open to be booked are serving ads, and so that's tours and activities, cruises, properties. Right? Think like Airbnb or VRBO, those types of services. And then last but absolutely not least would be the FinServ market. And so we've got vertical ads happening for credit cards, but even things like tax services, insurance services, real estate, and insurance, both just think car insurance, but also health insurance. And so there's a lot happening in this space, and that's really just the tip of the iceberg. We have a lot more planned. And as I said, Google saw that writing on the wall too, and has several of these verticals that I've called out. They have similar programs going, but several of the ones that I mentioned are still exclusive to Microsoft Advertising.
So it's interesting because that really lines up. So I've been talking about this changing wave in search for a while now. I'm waiting for everybody else to catch up with me. So Bing has index now, right? So, which is that direct feed coming from the site, a direct validated feed from the site, not dependent upon crawl, helping with budgeting on that side, and then also authenticity, right? So you have your index now, ability to feed the engine, and then maybe cross-reference that with a little bit of schema markup and stuff like that to make sure everything is correct. Boom, right? Q4 of last year, holiday shopping season, to me and Google was Google Shopping finally taking taking the gloves off, right?
Right.
Because Google was testing everything with Google Shopping, free clicks, ads. One of my favorite hobbies is on the weekends. to search Google in incognito mode on my phone because I see all the stuff that they're testing, right? For all of you who are out there that want to see what Google's doing and want to see what updates look like, on the weekends, search on your phone incognito mode for some of your favorite queries and most competitive queries. You're going to see Google testing things like and what Google now determines for some reason to be informational intent results. They're going to be inserting shops, right? So like direct links to e-commerce pages and stuff like that. And then they're going to be serving, oh, I thought these were informational results, but suddenly there's a shopping ad at the top with direct products. So they do that as well all the time. And that's slowly become the thing. So like Google's gone feed, right? Last year, Microsoft Bing went feed on the organic side last year as well. And we all know that Google tests and they're experimenting and they worked with and everything on the Index Now side too, right? So Google's part of Index Now. They just are. Now, on the advertising side, we're seeing this line up with what you're doing with feeds, right? So from if I'm at a company, let me think of a car company that I have not worked with yet. Okay, I'm at cars.com, right? Or Car Guru. So I'm at one of these companies and I'm like, hey, you know what? I want to run ads. All I got to do is send that feed directly to you guys. You take care of it from an image perspective. Is there still room for organic SEO in the SERPs if all of this is happening from a feed perspective? Are people still scrolling down and clicking on organic links in the SERPs?
So that's a great question. The way that things are stacking up currently. So if we're talking strictly automotive, the automotive ad experience is dominating the search results page, right? Because it's serving.
Same with both engines, by the way. Same with both engines.
Exactly.
The automotive results in Google right now are complete garbage, by the way. They're serving like, if you try doing like a search for like, hey, F-150 near me, I'm getting results from like Georgia or like different countries, the UK, things like that, right? So like they've gone all in on the advertising side and the organics are not ideal. Right. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, John.
No, you're good. But it's
reminded this is happening in both engines.
Right. And it's probably a matter of data clarity, right? Just knowing what I know of what's happening on our end of things, the feed is coming through crystal clear, right? That is hard data that we can then take to create a match to a search query. And it's often more than just the search query. It's the query plus the user data, right? Where are they? Right, their geographic data, all of those components that we can then match to the hard data in the feed, which makes for a very relevant experience. And so, let's call it what it is right now. To create a richer experience for the end user, the ad experience is dominating the search results page.
Yep.
And across these verticals, right? So automotive is an easy example, right? But all of these verticals currently.
Exactly. And then just as a reminder to all of you out there that are SEOs and are running websites, or maybe you're SEOs and PPCs, all of your sites do have a feed. It's called an XML sitemap. Make sure that thing is updated. Make sure that Google is able to fetch it. Make sure Google's not serving errors. Make sure there's no redirects in your XML sitemap. Make sure there's no 404s in your XML sitemap. All of these engines work off of feeds. Also, don't be afraid to submit your RSS feeds for like your blog categories and stuff like that into the Search Console as well, and perhaps even mimic that within Webmaster Tools on the Bing side too. Search engines have gone very feed friendly. This is the way to go. It's also the way to go from an advertising perspective. And then let them cross-reference with what's in the feed with what's on your page. You're good to go. Done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's interesting too, right? Because as the industry continues to push harder on feeds, I continue to hear the question of, well, at what point does the keyword go away, right? I keep hearing that, right? Because search advertising, the foundation, right, is still built on keywords,
right?
And the answer to that is, well, they're not going away anytime soon. Core search, particularly on the advertising side, we're still doing a massive amount of business based on the keyword, and that's not going away anytime soon. Think of all of these other developments, these feed-based elements, as new flavors and additional flavors to make at the end of the day, to make an amazing user experience. And whether you're talking SEO, whether you're talking paid ads, all of it is working together to create an on-point user experience on the SERP, whether that's Google, whether that's Bing, etc.
Exactly. So adapt.
Yes.
You have to adapt. Make sure your schema is not serving out of stock signals to either engine, or you may not rank because you're telling them that you don't have it in stock, right? So what happens
Absolutely.
if the shelf runs out in the store? Store owner is going to put something else there, right? There's no more Hershey syrup. They're going to put Nestle Quick there. That's just the way it works. So
Yep.
just make sure.
Which is an interesting point there, right? So on the paid side, so on the advertising side for shopping, that's why we have an automatic updates feature within our merchant center to say, hey, we know that sometimes you're not going to be able to get every little minutia, every little change that's made on your site into your feed and submit it on time. You know, maybe you can't have that automated on a daily basis. Maybe you can only do that weekly or monthly, whatever. However, we know that you're going to have changes that happen. And so the automatic updates is something they're using the Bing bot, and it's scanning the end landing pages that are located in the product feed. And if it finds that something is out of stock or unavailable, it'll automatically disable it.
That's
right.
cool.
And so, because when we're talking feeds, relevancy and up to dateness, that's probably not even a phrase, but making sure that everything is up to date, that is what matters most.
Exactly.
Particularly when you're serving ads that someone's got to click, you're going to pay for, you darn well better make sure that your product's available.
Yeah, you don't want that to happen, right? That's the last thing you want if you're running an advertising campaign, or someone to click on that and go to a 404 page or redirect to the home page. You get lost, just hit the back button.
That's when you get the sad trombone, right?
Yeah, exactly. And just as a reminder, like that's cool that you all are doing that. Also, like for our listeners and viewers, a reminder too, like Google's going to scan your site and cross-reference data like that too. It happens all the time with Google Business Profiles, formerly known as Google My Business. Google's going to update your hours based upon what's on your site. So if you're putting like hours in your business profile that are different than what's on your site, you may not even start ranking in the local pack if you're having that information all messed up. And just make sure it matches, because Google will populate and change that based upon what you have on your site. And if you keep on changing it, there's a chances you're not going to show up at all. Speaking of like the way that SERPs, search engine result pages, look, how and you've talked about this to a degree, like with especially like automotive and travel. Like I can't imagine images being that important for. I mean, maybe they are for like credit cards, like someone chilling in the Amex,
it matters
Centurion
more than you might
Lounge
think.
or something. Yeah, chilling in the Centurion Lounge or like counting their money. But like, for like, how important are images with search advertising? And is this something that's often overlooked?
It is overlooked, and more than I can even say. So image extensions, right, is kind of where this started a number of years ago. I believe Google had a beta for a time, and then Microsoft followed suit. Google stopped theirs, but on the Microsoft side, it never stopped. It never went away. The image extension has been in place, I want to say like 8 years, something like that. But early on, it didn't show for every, not every query had an image extension being served, the ads, things like that. But over time, the frequency has increased. But we've also kind of built on the back of that concept. And I will say Google now has a fully functioning image extension as well. And we both platforms have what's called a multi-image extension. So think like a carousel on Facebook or Instagram. It's the same logic, the same idea within the search results page. And that is available to any advertiser. It does not matter if you're in an obvious category like automotive, right, where the image of the car matters greatly. It could be any industry, any vertical. If you are running ads, I urge you, take a look at what images can I upload. If you don't have images that you care to use, check us out on Microsoft Advertising. We've partnered with Shutterstock. So you have access to more than 300 million images and we use our own search technology. You can search the database to find something that matches, that's relevant. All applicable, Creative Commons license, right? All applicable for you to use in a business setting. So images matter greatly. Why? Well, people are just image friendly users of the internet, right? We're attracted to images. Like that's just basic psychology in advertising. And further, we've all become accustomed to seeing these beautiful image compilations on social media. Facebook really kind of kicked things off with that carousel. We're used to seeing those now, right? And using them. It's kind of second nature. And so having a similar experience come into the search results page, one, it feels familiar, but two, from an advertiser perspective, it increases click-through rate. We've seen some data in some verticals where it actually helps improve conversion rate as well, just because it's creating that relevancy match before the user even clicks on the ad. But we haven't stopped there. So for those search geeks that are listening, you may remember a while back, I want to say 6-7 years ago, Google tested what was effectively a takeover ad on the search results page. It did not make it very long. I think they tested it maybe 2-3 months and then they ditched it. We sort of kind of backed into doing something similar, but we call ours the multimedia ad. And any search campaign that you're running, you can check a box and say, yes, I want to run a multimedia ad. And what'll happen is you have the option to add two different image types. One is sort of a long rectangle, another one is a perfect square. And what'll happen is if you win the top spot, you win ad placement number one, you have it's going to happen automatically based on the overall mix of the search results page, including organic, the info pane and all of that. Depending on what's being served, you're either going to have this takeover at the very top, so that rectangle, or you're going to have your normal text ad in the block of ads, in the main line, and then over to the right, you're going to have this big square, beautiful image with an alternate headline running and effectively take over the first spot of the search results page. And this is something that we've had in place now, I want to say a little over a year, and it's continuing to gain momentum. But the reason why it's so important is these features aren't going anywhere. They're here for the long run. The data is hugely positive behind them. And so many search advertisers that I speak to and that I hear from on the regular basis still don't think about images when they're thinking search, right? And that mentality needs to change, right? There needs to be, yes, I'm going to focus on my text creative. I'm going to get all of the, my I's dotted, my T's crossed, all of this stuff for my search campaign, but you also need to be thinking about images. And a lot of the time, I think you're running ads in other places that use images, and so you don't tell me you don't have imagery, that you don't have creative. I'm gonna call shenanigans on that.
Exactly. And listen, like I'm gonna do a search here, like on Google. Okay, this is a Google search. I just searched for French braids, right? Because I'm such a hair expert. So like as I'm scrolling, so I got the carousel at the top, right? It's actually my client. I'm really happy about that. So and then as I scroll down, I got video and I got all the little video segments. And then as you scroll down, you get, people also ask no images. And then we have short videos, right? We have short videos. Looks like Instagram to me. I don't know. That doesn't look like Google. Looks like Instagram and TikTok. And then once you get into the regular results, it's all images.
Yes.
Even if it's not how-to schema or not, like I think the first one is definitely a how-to schema there. It's like 1, 2, 3 steps, and it's just all images. It's images all the way down. So like, think about it, and I'm sure Bing is like this too. I'll do a search on Bing later. But those of you that are listening to this show, like I just did a search on Google, and the whole thing is video and images. And I was on a call with a client a couple months ago, and they brought up an interesting term, and I had never heard of it before, but they were like, okay, so how is this title and image going to help with thumb stopping or scroll, like, and thumbs, how is it going to help with thumb stopping? I'm like, it took me a second, like, what? And he's like, yeah, like people are just scrolling. How's this going to help? And then it hit me like, okay, what is everyone doing that's on their phone whenever they're bored or they're in a meeting or whatever. They're just scrolling. They're just scrolling through Insta, scrolling through whatever, scrolling. Now scrolling through Google results and Bing results and Microsoft results. And you're giving an advertiser the ability to control which image is being shown.
That's correct.
To me, there's a couple of advantages there. One, if the competition is not showing an image, like game over. And two, if you have a better image and you happen to be at the top and have that top space, and you're getting a bigger image, it's even better for you at the end of the day. So
that's right. Yep.
Images.
Bigger is better in this case.
Bigger is better in this case. And then another thing I wanted to kind of go over today too is there's a new emerging persona with advertising.
Yes. So we already talked about consumer decision journey a bit, touching on that earlier in the call. But yeah, there's all sorts of personas, right, that we as marketers touch on that are unique to our business. But we started to see some data emerge through the pandemic that, one, was interesting, but two, made us stand up and pay attention to say, okay, there's something to this. There's this shift in act behavior online that we're seeing effectively a new persona emerge. And so we partnered with Forrester Consulting to do some research, some actual Gen Pop research, to say, hey, we're seeing this in the data, but let's get some third party eyes on this to make sure that we validate it. At the end of the day, what we saw, and many of us had this happen to us as well, and that is through the pandemic, what used to be you had work life and you had home life, and they lived in very distinct buckets. Things merged together. And what we found in our research is that nearly 60% of the people that we surveyed, they think about work and personal tasks during work time, right? There is no longer work bubble, home bubble. It's just one bubble. And what we saw is that, one, the behavior is changing, but what does that mean? Like, what does that really mean? Well, 62% of people that we surveyed said that they regularly research or purchase products during work time. So not only has overall behavior shifted, just in terms of like how we're using devices, say, our computers, our phones, whatever, but actual purchase behavior has shifted as well. And so this entity, right, which spans several sub-personas, and I'll circle back to that in just a second, but this new entity we call the Workday consumer. And so what that means is that as you're thinking through your personas and how you're going to target, you need to make sure that you're targeting people that, when you think time of day and all of these things, kind of break your previously held assumptions, break all of it down and say, okay, there is no more workday, there is no more, home life. It's just people are doing these things regardless of time of day. How could we get at them? And what's interesting is that, like I said, there's 4 what I would call sub personas within this. So like the Workday consumer is just kind of more descriptive of the behavior, but within that we see things spiking with digital nomads, right? So I live at home, I work at home, and in fact I've done that pre-pandemic. But that being said, I'm also the type of person who can work from anywhere. And sometimes I do, right? Sometimes I work from a coffee shop. But it goes even bigger than that. The digital nomad is that individual that they just pick up and move one day, right? Yeah. And so they'll be anywhere at any time. You have the luxury shopper, right? So we're thinking about people that are business professionals, are likely gainfully employed. They are also shopping for luxury items online, and oftentimes during what we would have assumed was a work time.
And not on their phones anymore, right?
Exactly.
It used to be like sneaking it on the phone while in the office. One thing I've noticed during this whole time is like desktop usage has gone up. And some
significantly.
Some areas, right? When everyone was like, "Oh no, phone desktop is dead." Like that's only in work. It's only B2B. No, not anymore.
Okay. No, and sales of PCs skyrocketed through the pandemic. Some of that was simply need based. Right? People needed a laptop, whereas maybe they had a desktop at work. You can't just rip that up and take it home, and at least not easily. So some of that was need based, but some of it was also simply behavior based. And we've seen sales dwindle a little bit, but I know in the last earnings call from Microsoft, we're still seeing strong numbers simply on hardware, let alone all of the behavior that goes with it. But no, there's the digital nomad, the luxury shopper. We see self-care enthusiasts, right? So those individuals that are both searching for and purchasing those self-care items that they need on a daily basis. And then last but not least is the empowered activist. People that care, right, about a particular cause or things like that. Again, we've seen a swell of search activity behind activism. And if you think about the events of the last couple of years, even just the past week, right, there are so many things happening in what's happening here in the US, but happening globally that is on people's minds, and their search activity reflects that greatly. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, the Workday consumer is something that we've been thinking about for quite a while, but we've finally given a name to, and put our money where our mouth is with some research. And so yeah, I think really the challenge to everyone is that part of our survey was also to find marketing professionals and marketing leaders, and we did. And a lot of the answers we got were not awesome in that most of them rated themselves and their businesses as like novice to intermediate at actually utilizing personas in their audience targeting. I'm like, really? Yeah. We all talk about this stuff every day, right? We've talked about it on this call. But a lot of the people that we reached out and talked to in this survey were saying, they're like, yeah, we get it, but we're not that hot at actually applying it. And so really the big takeaway from this research for us was, one, there's this behavior shift, be mindful, but two, be mindful of how you're actually applying this in your marketing work day in and day out.
Amazing. So good stuff. So just to recap what we've talked about today, first of all, the size of the Microsoft advertising ecosystem, it's only getting bigger. It's only growing, right? Secondly, the whole LinkedIn attribution, like the ability to target people's LinkedIn profile information within Microsoft advertising, nice little workaround. It's not a secret, it's not a sleeper, but not too many people talk about it. So
that's right.
Everyone I've told that to after that, like the mind's blown. It's like
tell your friends, people. Tell your friends.
It's like a party trick. It's like
that's right.
It's like a card trick or something. Like, what? Really? Like, yes, you can go. You can do that.
So we're making it rain with LinkedIn profile targeting.
You have to send in mails. So, and then also just the importance of feeds and the changing environment of how search, not only paid but also organic, is changing the way that information is served to them, is reconciled, and then finally served to the user, and through all of the different formats out there available, including image, et cetera. So anything else you'd like to add today from a work perspective before we get into some personal questions?
Okay, nothing from a work perspective. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I feel pretty good with where we're at. So
cool.
Fire away with the personal questions.
So you're in a cover. What's the name of your band?
We are the Red Belly Rock Club.
Okay. Why Red Belly?
Red Belly is what you give a friend who's, basically the way it was explained to me is a red belly is what you give your friend when they're, acting a fool, right? You just give them a quick slug to the belly, give them a red belly.
Gotcha.
I didn't come up with that one. I just go with it.
Area where I grew up in, apparently the next town over used to call us yellow bellies. I'm like, why would you call us yellow bellies? And apparently it's because the clay and the dirt is yellow, and everyone that came from where I came from is a snake in the grass. So we get yellow clay all over our bellies. So
Wow.
That's
That's involved.
yeah. So, okay. Odd question. Sorry. And what do you guys typically play?
So
What's the set look like?
Yeah, we say we're a classic rock cover band. I mean, it's mostly from that late 70s, eearly 80s, the cassette era of classic rock.
Thank you for clearing that up, by the way, because the classic rock stations now play like stuff that I listened to when I was in college and high school. That's not classic rock.
It's not. No. So for those that are Sirius XM users, there's actually a station called Cassette Classic Rock. That's effectively the band that I'm in. But we have a couple of 90s songs that we throw in just for giggles because it completely surprises people, including Down by 311 of all things. But that's
actually a really
it's a crowd pleaser.
Song.
Yeah, it is
awesome. Like I think 311 it's too much crap. Like I think between Down and there's like one other song that they had.
Well, Amber is the Color of Your Energy is the one I always remember.
But that guitar riff and Down, it just like it blows up immediately. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what else do you play from the 90s? Do you play any Georgia Satellites?
We don't know, but like we're heavy on Zeppelin and ZZ Top and Foghat. I mean, it's a long list. We know collectively as a band like 150 songs and typically play somewhere between 3 to 4 hour sets. And so we have a lot of music that we can touch on any given evening. And so we've got a gig coming up here in a couple of weeks. I'm stoked. It's always fun. That's practicing is fine. That's nice. But playing out in front of a live audience is always a treat.
Is it an adrenaline rush? I've only done it once, and then our band broke up. Like, is it an adrenaline rush?
It's an adrenaline rush, and like it's one of those things where practice is essential to make sure that you know what you're doing. However, at least I'll speak for myself. When we perform, it's like you go to a whole different level. Like you have more power in your voice. What you're doing with your instruments is cleaner. It's I don't know. You show up, and it's that showmanship part of it, right? And yeah, there's an adrenaline rush behind it for sure. It's definitely my happy place.
There are a lot of musicians that are in search. What do you think the connection is?
A lot of the musicians I've met are just brilliant, bright people. Sometimes a little bent, but I don't say that in a nasty way. I think bent in fun, ways. And very, very few people that have found a lot of success in this industry set out in their careers to be marketers in one way or another. And I think that just people that have creativity and gumption and a bit of entrepreneurship have landed themselves in this industry and found success. And that often includes musicians, right? Because to put yourself out there in a big way, you've got to have some gumption.
So what Zeppelin songs do you play that are not like the old Standby Zeppelin songs? You ever throw in any
Good
surprises?
Times, Bad Times is like our favorite to do. We do play Ocean. 1, right? Yeah, we play Ocean. And I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but we started learning that one. Can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. Shame on me. But we
come from Atlanta, so
there you go. Yeah, but Zeppelin is it's funny. Like it doesn't matter where you put it in your set list, you're going to get some people that stand up and pay attention at that point.
It's a good song to throw in there. I'm going completely off track. Shapes of Things. So originally done by the Yardbirds, right? And then redone by, was it the Faces or no, the Jeff Beck Group. Redone by the Jeff Beck Group. And then when the Black Crowes and Jimmy Page did their Live at the Greek album, it's on side 2. You should put that in your set list.
Hit me with that title one more time.
Shapes of Things.
Shapes of
Things to come. Yeah.
You got practice tomorrow night. I'll bring it up with the crew.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I just handed you over like instant tip money and some free beers for next time you play. So, and you've been at Microsoft for how long now?
5 years and 6 months.
What did you do previously to Microsoft?
So before that, I've actually been in this wonderful industry of ours for 16 years. And I was agency side for most of that. I actually co-owned Clicks Marketing up until I came to Microsoft.
Okay.
I love this industry. I love everything about it.
Clicks Marketing, CLIX Marketing.
That's correct.
Right?
And they're still kicking butt and taking names too. I left
Who's
them
running that
in a
shop
good place. Yeah, her name is May Polchinski. So she and I were co-owners when I left, and it was one of those things where I was ready for the next thing in my career. It had nothing to do with relationships or even quality of business, right? So left things in good and capable hands, and like I said, she's still kicking butt and taking names, and the world is all the better for it.
Awesome. Well, I've dropped where to find you on Twitter as well as LinkedIn, and I highly recommend any just search for John Lee Microsoft Advertising. You'll find where to find John. Your Microsoft profile shows up first, by the way, which is kind of cool.
It does.
And if you're listening out there, just search up John Lee Microsoft Advertising. Connect with John on Twitter. You're since you are an evangelist, you are very approachable. I've found within social media. It's been really great having you on the show today, getting to know you a little bit better. I'm going to send you over a couple songs I think you should add to your set list as well.
Love it. Please do.
Next time you play. Not going to hold anything against you with that Indianapolis Colts hat I see there. I do come from Baltimore, so we're just still
okay. Yeah, there's some pain there. I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you.
Yeah, how come the Browns got to keep their name and and Baltimore and all these other? Oh man. So anyway, it's really been a pleasure having you here today on the SEJ Show, John. Anything you'd like to say before we sign off, or any other places people can reach you online?
I think we've covered the big bases. LinkedIn and Twitter are going to be the best places to hit me up, particularly if we're going to talk advertising and search. But other than that, I'll just simply say thank you to everyone who listened in today, and thank you, Lauren, for having me on the show. It's been a blast.
It's been a pleasure. All right. Have a good one, John. Have a good one, everybody. And we'll see you on the next SEJ Show.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Search Engine Journal Show. If you liked this episode, subscribe to our channel for so much more and click the notification bell so you don't miss a thing.